Shalom, everybody. This podcast was recorded just a few days before the attack in Sydney, Australia, that took the life of 15 Jewish people at a beach gathering for the first night of Hanukkah. This is a terrible attack. It continues to show that anti-Semitism is out of control, out of the box, and it's not going back. But friends, I am posting this podcast because Hanukkah is the festival of dedication, the festival of lights. It points to Yeshua. It's quoted in the New Testament, actually. And it will not cease. We will not be intimidated. I will light my candles every single night of Hanukkah proudly as a Jew, and I will not be intimidated by those who are trying to destroy us. Speak up, stand up. Thank you for watching. Should Christians celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas, both, or in the Christian Bible it talks about the Feast of Hanukkah?
Yes, it does.
But it's not so much that Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas, but that Christmas could not have happened without Hanukkah. So, friends, shalom. This is Olivier here, and I have a special program today, a little different. Different for several reasons. First of all, it's going to be on one of the Jewish holidays that everybody wants to know more about, Hanukkah, as we are in the week of the Feast of Hanukkah as we speak. So I wanted to give you some background story about the whole thing from different perspective. But also it's different because I don't get to do shows in my studio, my little office studio, very often with guests in the studio. And this is my good friend Robb Schwarz. Robb, good to have you here.
Good to be here. Thanks.
And we usually have the 3 Jews, 5 opinions. So today it's 2 Jews. So what, 3 opinions?
At least.
At least. Okay, maybe 5.
Give us time.
Exactly. Maybe it takes 2. Maybe we'll still get 5 out of 2 of us. Who knows? So of course, don't forget to subscribe if you don't already subscribe to our channel. Visit shalomandmessiah.com and get our free resources. You can also support the ministry on the website shalomandmessiah.com, and follow us on Telegram. Find us on YouTube, on Instagram, on X, on Facebook. Either type Shalom in Messiah or Olivier Melnick, and you will be able to connect with us. So let's get started. Now, did you grow up celebrating Hanukkah?
Yeah.
And so, people always say, well, Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas.
It's been, yes. It was us. It was us and them. They had Christmas. We had Hanukkah.
And then, of course, we always say, you, the Christians, you have Christmas and you have presents for one day, and Hanukkah
8 days.
So there you go. What can I tell you? But really, I want to get back to that a little later in the program. But it's not so much that Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas, but that Christmas could not have happened without Hanukkah. We'll talk about that later, but you know what I mean by that.
Yep, of course.
And so let's set the stage a little bit. Where do we get Hanukkah from? Where's the story from?
Well, we know it comes from the book of 2 Maccabees, which interestingly is not part of the Bible canon, as they call it, right? So it is considered, was it the
Apocryphal.
The apocryphal, right? And so these were documents that were written between the close of the Old Testament and the opening of the New Testament, which, of course, in Jewish circles is not considered part of the Jewish history. However,
but they have great historical value.
Well, not only do they have great historical value, but they give you a first century look at what Jewish life was like, especially around the temple.
Right.
Yep.
So we get the story of Hanukkah in 2 Maccabee, but is there anything in the Jewish Bible, in the Old Testament, that maybe if it's not clearly about Hanukkah as clear as Second Maccabees. And by the way, the reference for Second Maccabee is Second Maccabees 4:7-50. Again, it is a historical value. It's not inspired, but it might be interesting to read it online if you want to find it. Second Maccabee 4:7-50. Do we find anything about Hanukkah in the Old Testament in the Tanakh?
There are references in the book of Daniel, and it's not by name, which is kind of interesting. It mentions the idea of the abomination of desolation, which of course is going to be tied into the destruction of the temple at some point in the future. But there was one that happened then, and there's going to be another one that's going to happen in the future. So.
And so in the book of Daniel again, if you want the reference, it's in Daniel 8:9-14, which is the connection with the one on the Maccabees that I just gave you, and the other one is Daniel 11:21-35. Now, when we hear Hanukkah, people see, like you see it right above my head in the back, a menorah. But I noticed that, as you're watching this, you're noticing that, that the menorah is a very Jewish symbol, and we find it in various places in the Tanakh, the symbol of the menorah, which actually, I believe the menorah is more of a Jewish symbol than the Star of David, if you really want to look back in this.
Well, it depends on which menorah you're talking about, right? This is the Hanukkah, which is different than the regular menorah, right?
How is this menorah different from all the others?
You know what? I've heard that somewhere.
How's this night different? That's Passover.
There you go.
Let's come back for Passover later.
There you go, right? This one has actually technically 9 candles on it. 8 for, of course, the 8 nights of Hanukkah, and the middle one, which is called the Shamash, which is used as a servant candle, and that one lights all the other ones as you go night to night for Hanukkah.
And but where does it come from, the idea of lighting the candles for 8 nights? Is there a background story of why we do that? Can you tell us?
Well, there is. In the book of Second Maccabees, it describes the defeat by the Maccabee, the rebellion in a sense against the Syrian Greeks. What is interesting about that story, and doesn't get mentioned all the time, is that was a battle that took place right about the time of Sukkot, which of course is the last of the Levitical observances that comes in the fall.
That's Tabernacles.
Feast of Tabernacles. And so what happened was it took them extra time to defeat the Syrian Greeks and then push them out and then take the time to cleanse the temple and prepare it for service. However, since they did not celebrate Sukkot at that time, they delayed the Sukkot celebration and did it in the month of Kislev. So in a sense, what you're celebrating at Hanukkah is a very late Sukkot from that year.
But isn't there also a Jewish legend that's been carried over the years about the miracle of the oil?
Well, that's a very interesting story. This is the story that the rabbis have
that's
told.
That's why I say legend, because it preaches well.
It does, and it's a great story, and it gives everybody a feel-good, kind of a feel-good story, right? So the idea is that there was not enough oil to conduct the lighting of the temple menorah, and so supposedly, according to the legends, the oil actually burned for 8 days instead of only 1 day, and that gave them the miracle of Hanukkah, the extra days that the oil was burned, and so that's what we tend to celebrate, and that's why pretty much everything that you eat around Hanukkah time is cooked in oil.
Very healthy.
Very healthy. Well, if it's olive oil, it's good for you, right?
It's olive oil, yes. Yeah, we eat potato latkes.
Potato latkes.
And I'm absolutely certain that mine are the best in the world.
They've got to be. If they come out of the mill in the kitchen, what else would you say?
My mother made really good latkes, and I get the same recipe from her. And of course, I don't do that too much, but we also eat jelly donuts called
Souvganiot.
Souvganiot. That's again, jelly donuts. Donuts are
fried in oil.
Fried in oil, and so this is because the connection is the miracle, the miracle of the oil. What else in the Jewish tradition do we do at Hanukkah? We use those little tops. What do they call them?
This is the dreidel.
And there are 4 letters on. I'm looking at this one. It's on top of the dreidel here, and they're the initials for Nes Gadol Hayashem.
Right.
Which means
a great miracle happened here. But if you're outside of Israel, the last letter changes and it says a great miracle happened there.
Right. It's actually, yeah, that's exactly right. So if it's a dreidel that you use in Israel, a great miracle happened here, outside happened there. There's a slight difference on one of the letters. It's a game that we play. Now, the legend on this, the backstory is that when the Jewish people, when they were the soldiers, the Syrian soldiers would walk around and basically, as many times in our history, we were forbidden to worship. We were forbidden to gather. We were forbidden to do a lot of things as
Right.
Jews.
Study the Torah.
Story of our
Right.
life,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and study that. So we were. The legend goes that basically, when Jewish people would want to study the Torah, they would study, and then when they would hear, they would somebody keeping watch and looking for what's happening outside. And if they would see soldiers come, they would quickly pull the little tops, the little dreidels, and pretend to play a game, an innocent game, so they wouldn't get in trouble. And we don't know if it's true, but the game is connected to having fun together corporately, which is the very least is connected to the Feast of Hanukkah, which leads me to my next question. What as in your mind, what aspect of God's character are revealed in the Feast of Hanukkah?
Well, we know from the New Testament that Jesus, or we know him as Yeshua, was the light of the world. He comes bearing light. He is the light bringer. And the whole Hanukkah festival is called the Festival of Lights, which is highly ironic because when you go to drive through your neighborhoods about this time of year, all the houses are lit up with lights. But oftentimes, in fact, in most cases, Jewish homes don't participate in putting out any of the lights.
Or sometimes they're blue and white lights. And
Or they're, well, I was going to
Jewish
say,
home.
I was going to get there. Sometimes it's blue and white. And when my family has gone out, we said, oh, got to be Jewish people there, right? But the idea really of keeping light burning for all of us, we always look back to the Messiah. That is he's really the reason we're here. He is the one who is known as the light of the world. And this is a great time of the year to remember that he's burning in all of our hearts, right? That's really where we're going with this. And I think one of the funniest things, in fact, we were going to talk about this in a few minutes, I'm sure, if I might get ahead of ourselves a little bit. In the Gospel of John, there's a passage in the 10th chapter. Olivier is going to read this because it's significant. The references to Hanukkah in the Jewish Bible or the Hebrew Scriptures, it doesn't mention Hanukkah by name necessarily, but in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John, it does mention. Isn't that interesting? It actually mentions something that, and I've got a great story about this. I'll have to tell you later. Maybe I'll even tell the audience.
Wait.
Yeah.
In the Christian Bible, which all our people say is not a Jewish book, which of course I disagree.
Go figure.
In the Christian Bible, it talks about the Feast of Hanukkah.
Yes, it does. Why don't you read it for us? We didn't plan this at all.
It's no, we didn't. We planned to get together and speak on Hanukkah. That we planned, but this is not scripted, right?
Well,
This is scripted.
Well, let's see if it's in the book. See
Okay.
if you can find it.
Well, John 10, verse 22 and 23, and I read, at that time, the feast of the dedication, and that's another name for Hanukkah, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
The
Yep.
dedication of the temple.
Yep. Dedication of the temple.
Rededication after the temple had been desecrated by what's his name?
Epiphanes?
Antiochus Epiphanes the Fourth, as we read in Daniel. So at that time, the feast of the dedication took place at Jerusalem. So it gives us a location. It was winter. It gives us a time. And Yeshua was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. So Yeshua was at the temple at the time they celebrated the feast of dedication, the festival of lights, Hanukkah.
In the temple of the Temple of Solomon. And what I find fascinating about the story, it goes on a little further. And this is the time that he decides, or he's getting questions from the Pharisees. And this is the time he establishes clearly his role as the Messiah of Israel and the Jewish people. So Hanukkah then becomes a much bigger, he chooses this time. A lot of people think that he's celebrating Hanukkah. I'm not so sure I would call it a celebration as much as it was that he was observing and respecting this as part of Jewish, if we might use the word tradition or practice. He was there and he took the opportunity to use this moment to declare himself as the Messiah.
And this is in that passage following the rest of chapter 10 until verse 42, when he declares, I and the Father are one.
Yeah, pretty dramatic moment, isn't it?
That to a Jewish audience, that would sound like blasphemy.
It would, unless, of course, you are who
Unless
you
it's
are.
the truth.
Unless it's the truth,
which
absolutely.
which it is.
Yep.
And so that made a lot of waves. I mean, another thing that we haven't said that I think, to me, is very very telling and very beautiful, is the idea that the menorah, the 9-branch menorah, which is really like Rob said, 8+1, the one that's always like higher than the other, or center, or in the front, or displayed more prominently than the other 8, that is the one that is known, as Rob mentioned, as the shamash, the servant. And I find it fascinating that the servant we use that candle to light 1 on the first night, 2 on the second night, 3 on the third night, on and on and on, all the way to the 8th night. And that servant candle brings light to the others. So I look at another connection where Yeshua came to serve and to bring light to a dark world.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may share a story.
All right.
Here we go.
Okay,
2 Jews, 5 opinions.
Exactly.
10
How long is it going to
12
go?
Oh, this is going to be a long one.
Okay. All right. Brace yourself, friends.
So my daughter went to Lutheran schools for a few years, and one of the times, I think she was in 6th grade, they'd asked my wife Nancy, to do a little Hanukkah teaching for the kids. And so she prepared a little presentation. And as she's going through it, she asked the children, this is a group of Lutheran kids that didn't know anything about Hanukkah. She says, where do you find Hanukkah in the Bible? So the kids had no idea. And she says, well, let's turn to the Gospel of John. And so she reads this very same verses that Olivier just read. The teacher, his name was Trevor, great guy. He'd been to Lutheran schools all of his life. He goes to the back of the room, opens up his Bible from his desk, fishes out the Bible, and he turns to the Gospel of John and he reads it over, and he looks at my wife and he looks at the kids and he says, all of my life, I've read this many, many times, but I never saw it for what it is. And I thought to myself, isn't it interesting that when you get a little bit of culture and a little bit of history and you put that together with the scripture, you get the fuller picture. And all of that has to do with Jewish practice and Jewish history. And that's not to say, and I need to make this clear here, that's not to say that people need to become Jewish or do Jewish things, but it's interesting to look at the history and the cultural background there to fully understand the full story of what Jesus' life was really all about and what he was really trying to do.
Absolutely. The context, the historical context is that, the New Testament, I don't like the fact that we call it the New Testament, because this is, the inference here is that if it's new, there must be an old, and whatever is old is being superseded by the new. So the old is, there's even teachers today, and I think they're wrong, who said that we need to unhitch from the Old Testament. That's just wrong. You cannot read a book by ignoring the first 2/3 of the book. You will not get the story. You're going to get a partial story that will make no sense at all. So the same idea goes that when we look at things like this, when we understand the context, we're not trying to Judaize here, but the context is a Jewish context, and when you understand the culture, the customs, and the context, and some of those things, of course, like we just shared, they are like stories that have been passed down over the centuries, and some of them are extra biblical, or things that are more the legends and not necessarily happened, but they connect to the theme. But there's a lot of historical context that once you understand it, it gives you the proper perspective to understand God's word, and I think it makes a big difference.
Absolutely does. You bet. One of the things that I find interesting here is this doesn't just happen in the Gospel of John, but the Hebraic Jewish nature of the entire, what we call the New Testament, it is in Messianic circles, it's called the Brit Hadashah, which is basically the New Testament, New Covenant in a sense, right? it is there are Jewish themes running throughout the entire New Testament, including Paul's letters, including the letter to the Hebrews, which of course is very, very clear there. But the Gospels carry a lot of this, not only just, I would call it tradition, but it's tradition based on fact. And so these biblical facts, when put against their proper historical context, can change some of the perceptions of what these stories are about. And I mean, I've heard them called stories, and for the purposes of maybe of this discussion here, we can call them that. But they're very much historical facts.
Right.
And as we look at them together, we begin to weave a story, or a narrative, maybe is a better way to put it, of what the true nature of the entire Scripture, from Genesis all the way through the book of Revelation, is really all about. And when we get to the point where the end times, which of course this channel and others like it are very focused on messianic prophecy and prophecy of the end times and all of that stuff, this particular incident in the Gospel of John is casts a very large shadow and a light, maybe you could even say a light, to the greater backdrop of what the entire story is about.
Yes, and it also helps us understand the Jewishness of the New Testament.
Right.
And I was in Israel a few months ago, and I had a great honor, a privilege of sharing my story of how I came to the Lord, and also why we do at Shalom and Messiah, what we do to help the IDF. So I was talking to a group of IDF reservists, and I gave them a Bible, but before I gave them the Bible, I said, this is the Bible that you're told not to read because it's not Jewish, it's the Christian Bible. And I said, and let me read the first 2 verses of the first chapter of the first book of the Bible you're told is not Jewish. And here we go. Matthew 1, verses 1 and 2. The book of the genealogy of Yeshua the Messiah, the son of David, not Jewish, right?
Nope.
The son of Abraham, not Jewish.
Nope.
Abraham was the father of Isaac, not Jewish.
Uh-oh. We're getting into some pretty scary
And Isaac
territory
was
here.
the father of Jacob.
Uh-oh.
Not Jewish. And Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Not Jewish. There's nothing Jewish.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Go figure. Yeah, nothing to see here.
No, nothing to see.
Nothing Jewish to
Move
see.
along,
Move along. Nothing Jewish. The whole book is like this, friends. You know that, but you need to tell your Jewish friends. This is a book that is better understood when read from a Jewish perspective. Again, we're not trying to Judaize. We're not trying to say that you have to become a Jew to understand the book. Simply read it from the proper context, and it helps with that the few verses about Hanukkah, and that's pretty much it. All I wanted to say about Hanukkah. Do you have any final thoughts? I mean, well, let me ask you this as a closing thought. Should Christians celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas, both, or where do you stand on that?
What a great question that is.
This is the part when you get 3 opinions out of 2 Jews.
At least. I think there is great value in observing Hanukkah, and you don't have to go crazy with it, but just reading the story together and understanding what it's about, I think it's a beautiful time of the year. And as I think we were talking about this earlier, we're talking here about the birth of the Messiah, and we can debate about when that happened during the calendar. Less important about that is the fact that it did happen, and that Messiah was born to a Jewish family in a particular period of time. And even the bigger picture there is his mission here, which was to die for our sins. And I keep thinking to myself, we talk a lot about the birth of Messiah. What really needs to happen is the real achievement to all this was his death and his resurrection. Because once that resurrection was firmly in place, once he was recognized as the one that rose from the dead, that gave all of us life.
Absolutely.
So the light of the world came to die for us, and then we are then resurrected with him.
Yeah, right? That's the fulfillment of the Feast of First Fruit after Passover, which that's for another day. But early on in the podcast, and I want to finish with that, I said that Hanukkah and Christmas are connected, not because Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas. That's cute, okay? We get 8 nights, the Christians get 1 night. That's cute, but that's not the reason. Hanukkah and Christmas are connected. I like to tell people that there wouldn't be Christmas if it wasn't for Hanukkah.
It's true.
Because the way that God provided for the Jewish people and protected the Jewish people back in the days maintain the line so that the Messiah would be born. If Antiochus Epiphanes had, as many times before and after people tried to destroy the Jews, which is Satan's ultimate plan, then no Jews, no Jewish Messiah, no Jewish Messiah, no Jesus, no Jesus, no salvation.
That's it.
So there wouldn't be Christmas if he was not for Hanukkah. And it's not. We're not saying this because the Jews are better than the Gentiles. It's just a fact of history.
It's history. I have I don't know if I'd call it a challenge, but I'm going to toss this out to everybody watching. You're going to post this in the next day or so, right?
It's going to post. Yeah, it's posting literally in the first few days of Hanukkah.
So I know this is a timestamp. So Sunday night is the first night of Hanukkah. I think the 14th.
Yes,
right?
and this will be posted actually probably Monday or Tuesday. So right.
Oh, you're not going to do it before.
No, it's going to be.
Okay. So if you're watching this, that's fine. Think about how many of your churches mention Hanukkah. So if you're watching this a day or so afterwards, perfectly okay. How many of your pastors mention Hanukkah this coming Sunday?
Or next Sunday.
Or even the following Sunday.
Right.
And if they don't mention it, so if you're seeing this, let's say after the first night, since it runs eight nights, the pastor has an opportunity to say something the next Saturday, or the next Sunday, I should say. And if you have a chance, ask him, are you going to mention Hanukkah tonight?
And say, maybe ask your pastor, hey, did you know that Hanukkah is mentioned in the New Testament? So make a note, John 10, 22 and 23. Maybe open your pastor's eyes to a couple of verses in the New Testament that he had no idea were a reference to the Jewish Festival of Lights.
Yep. It's a great, discovering things like this adds so much to our walk, the joy of having the Messiah in our lives. And so we wanted to do something for Hanukkah for you, getting an opportunity here to dig into the scripture a little bit and see this history come alive.
Well, friends, thanks for watching. Rob, Hag Hanukkah Sameach.
Hag Sameach.
Which means happy holidays.
Right.
And we wish you happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And we'll see you next time. Until then, be blessed.
Thank you.